Vivienne Summers realized she was in the wrong room the moment the man on stage said, "Let's talk about scaling mergers across international markets." She froze in the doorway of the massive ballroom, her hands still gripping the leather strap of her oversized tote bag. Around her, a sea of sleek suits, laptops, and lanyards turned briefly toward her before returning their attention to the tall man at the podium. Vivienne's stomach dropped. This wasn't the local Arts Council grant workshop. This was something else, something corporate, something terrifying. She backed up, trying to quietly escape, but then the speaker's voice cut clean through the room. "You," he said. She stopped. "Yes, you. In the jeans, and what is that paint on your shirt?" A few people chuckled. Vivienne's cheeks flamed. "I'm so sorry. I think I'm in the wrong too late. You've already disrupted us." The man stepped out from behind the podium, and now she saw him fully tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair that looked like it had been mussed by one too many late nights and not enough sleep. His crisp white shirt was rolled at the sleeves, revealing strong forearms and a watch that probably cost more than her entire car. "I'm just gonna go," she mumbled, turning. "Stay," he said. She turned back toward him, frowning. "What? I want to hear what you think. What's your name?" Her heart thumped. "Vivienne. Vivienne Summers." "Well, Vivienne Summers," he said, his voice dry, "you've already crashed my conference. You might as well make it worth it." Laughter again. "I didn't crash anything," she said, her voice rising. "I was trying to find the Arts Council talk." "Room B." He raised an eyebrow. "This is Room B." "What?" He glanced down at the tablet in his hand. Apparently, they moved the Arts Council to Room E. "We were double booked. Welcome to corporate logistics." A few people clapped. Vivienne was still trying to process the fact that she had just interrupted a Millionaire keynote speaker when he added, "Stay. I'll try not to bore you to death." She looked around. Everyone else was watching her. Waiting. Vivienne's pride kicked in. "Fine," she said, lifting her chin. "But I'm not taking notes." He grinned. "Deal." She found an empty chair in the back, trying not to trip over her own feet. By the time the session ended 45 minutes later, she realized she hadn't looked at the clock once. The man Tristan Prescott, according to the program, was not what she expected. He was sharp, yes, but he was also funny, disarming, and when he spoke about building businesses that actually made the world better, not just richer, something about it got under her skin. After the applause died down and the room began to empty, Vivienne grabbed her bag and rushed for the door. But he was waiting. "You survived," he said, falling into step beside her. "I didn't say I enjoyed it," she said, trying not to glance at his ridiculously square jaw. He chuckled. "That's fair. You're not a suit." "No," she said. "I make murals. On buildings. For kids, hospitals, schools. I came here to apply for funding." He looked at her like she'd just said something fascinating. "Let me guess. You work out of a tiny studio that leaks when it rains, drink too much coffee, and think people who wear watches like mine are probably evil." She stared at him. "Wow, that's disturbingly accurate." "Thought so." She stopped at the elevator. "Well, thanks for not kicking me out." He leaned against the wall, hands in his pockets. "You know, I'm throwing a dinner tonight. Just a small thing with some investors and partners. You should come." She blinked. "You want me to crash that too?" "No," he said. "This time you'd be on the guest list." Vivienne hesitated. Everything about this man screamed trouble. In a perfect suit, with a perfect smile. "I don't belong at your kind of dinner," she said. He tilted his head. "Maybe not. But I think you'd make it more interesting." She crossed her arms. "Why me?" He smiled. "Because you looked me in the eye in front of 200 people and told me you weren't impressed." Vivienne let out a breath. "I don't have anything to wear. I'll have something sent to your hotel." Her mouth opened. "You don't even know my size." He tapped his temple. "I'm good at guessing." She should have said no. She really should have. But when he stepped into the elevator and said 6 o'clock. Prescott Tower. Top floor. Before the doors closed, Vivienne stared at her own reflection in the glass and cursed softly. She was in so much trouble. At 5:45, a black car pulled up in front of her hotel. Vivienne stood frozen in the lobby, clutching the garment bag that had been delivered an hour earlier. Inside had been the most beautiful navy dress she had ever seen, sleek, simple, and somehow a perfect fit. There had been a note, "I never guess wrong. See you at 6. She told herself it was one dinner. One night, she slid into the car. But when the elevator doors opened at the top of the Prescott Tower, revealing a rooftop bathed in golden lights with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city that made her breath catch when she stepped out and saw him standing there in a tailored black suit, waiting for her, she knew. This wasn't just dinner. And Tristan Prescott? He wasn't just some millionaire speaker. He was the man who was about to turn her whole world upside down. The scent of white peonies and citrus lingered in the rooftop air, mingling with the low hum of a jazz trio playing near the glass terrace. Vivienne stepped lightly onto the heated stone floor, the hem of her dress brushing against her calves as she absorbed the space around her. Soft golden lanterns suspended from curved brass beams, waitstaff weaving through with silver trays, and a dozen guests dressed in quiet, effortless wealth. She tried not to fidget. Her heels were unfamiliar, elegant, yes, but clearly made for someone used to gliding, not stumbling. Tristan approached, his gaze sweeping over her before settling on her eyes. "You clean up dangerously well," he said, his voice low enough that she had to lean in slightly to hear it over the music. "And you throw parties that feel like Bond sets," she replied, forcing her hands to stay at her sides instead of adjusting the neckline for the 10th time. He offered his arm. "Come with me." Guests turned subtly as they moved past. A woman in a silver gown whispered something behind her hand to a man beside her. Vivienne caught the words, "not industry," and "bold choice." Tristan didn't flinch. He guided her to the edge of the rooftop, where a table had been set apart from the others. Not isolated, but distinct, as if he wanted her in view, but not within reach of casual scrutiny. "Why did you really invite me?" she asked once they sat, her voice steady despite the thrum beneath her skin. He leaned back, glass of something amber in hand. "Because you're not like them." "That's a vague compliment." "I don't do vague," he said. "You walked into a room full of power players and didn't shrink. You didn't pretend to understand what you didn't. That's rare. I also insulted you in front of 200 people. I liked that part." The waiter appeared with 2 dishes, no menus, no questions. Vivienne stared as her plate was set down. Seared scallops over saffron risotto with thin slices of black truffle curling like ribbons. She blinked. "I don't usually eat things I can't pronounce," she said. "Well, you're in luck," Tristan replied. "This one's just called dinner." She narrowed her eyes. "Are you trying to impress me or feed me into submission? Can it be both?" As she took a cautious bite, her eyes widened despite herself. He smiled faintly. "Your face just told me I won that round." "You win a lot of rounds, don't you?" she asked. "I'm used to it," he said, then paused. "But I don't think I'd win against you." Vivienne set her fork down. "What's your angle, Tristan?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked out at the skyline, fingers tapping once against his glass. "My company is shifting," he said finally. "We've spent a decade building tech that makes other companies more efficient, more profitable. But I want to move into impact ventures. Things that change communities. Education, accessibility, art." She stared. "So you want to invest in murals?" "I want to invest in people who see the value in things most of my world ignores." Vivienne sat back. "You read my application." He nodded. "Before you even walked into the wrong room. I fund the Arts Council. I review every finalist myself." Her stomach twisted. "Then this tonight wasn't random." "No," he said, "but it wasn't calculated either. I plan to meet you formally tomorrow. Shake hands. Offer a grant. But then you crashed my keynote and called me out on my watch. You deserved it." "I probably did." She looked at him carefully. "So what happens now? You give me a check? I paint a wall? And we never see each other again. He didn't answer. Instead, he stood and offered his hand. Come with me. She hesitated, then took it. He led her back inside, through a corridor of polished onyx and gold fixtures, into a private elevator. The doors closed, enclosing them in silence. The city lights flickered below as they ascended a level higher. When the doors opened, they stepped into a glass atrium lit only by moonlight and the reflection of stars on a still pool that cut through the center of the room. It was quiet, sacred almost, the kind of place that whispered instead of shouted. This is my private level, he said. No press. No investors. Just me. Why bring me here? Because I don't do this. I don't bring people into this part of my life. But I don't know how to do this the normal way with you. She felt her pulse notch higher. You barely know me. I know you're not afraid to challenge me. I know you care more about meaning than margins. I know you walked into a room you didn't belong in and didn't flinch. That's more than I know about most people I've worked with for a decade. Vivienne folded her arms. And what if I'm not interested in being your next project? Tristan stepped closer. You're not a project. You're the first person who's made me question if everything I've built actually matters. She hated how those words affected her, how her breath caught in ways she couldn't control. This is insane, she whispered. Probably, he said, but that's how most things worth doing start. She didn't know what to say to that, but when he reached for her hand again, she didn't pull away. Not yet. Because part of her wasn't sure if she wanted to walk away from him or run straight toward something she didn't understand at all. Vivienne stood at the edge of the glass atrium, her fingers grazing the smooth railing as the city shimmered below. The air was cooler up here, thinner, like the altitude belonged to someone else entirely. She had no idea how she'd ended up in the private rooftop sanctuary of a man who controlled entire markets with a signature. Tristan had stepped away for a moment, letting her breathe, letting her decide. She turned as he returned, holding 2 glasses of something dark and warm. He handed one to her, and for the first time that night, she noticed the way his tie had come undone, the top button of his shirt open like he'd finally allowed himself to relax. This doesn't feel like a business meeting, Vivienne said, taking a sip. It was smoky, smooth, and far too expensive for her to guess what it was. That's because it isn't, Tristan said, watching her. I've had enough of those today. She leaned against the railing. What do you usually do up here? Think. Avoid people. Pretend I'm not who I am. He paused. You're the first person I've brought up here. You said that already. I wanted to say it again. She looked over at him, her brow lifting. Because it means something, he added. Vivienne didn't respond right away. Instead, she set her glass down and walked to the far end of the room, where a long black piano sat under a skylight, its surface catching the starlight like a mirror. She ran a finger along the edge. Do you play? She asked. I used to, before the world got too loud. She sat on the bench, her dress folding neatly beneath her. Play something. He hesitated. I haven't touched it in years. Then tonight's as good a night as any. Tristan slowly crossed the space and sat beside her. His hands hovered over the keys, then pressed down. A low chord vibrated the air. Another followed. Then a melody fragile at first, then fuller, richer. Vivienne didn't recognize the piece, but it didn't matter. It was beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. I didn't expect you to be good, she said softly. I didn't expect you to still be here. She turned to face him. What exactly do you want from me, Tristan? He stopped playing. I want to stop feeling like everything I do is for someone else's benefit. I want to build something that doesn't need a 10-year projection to justify its existence. He looked at her, his expression unguarded. I want to feel like the things I touch don't just grow, they matter. She stared at him. That's not something you get by throwing money at it. I know. That's why I need someone who sees things differently. Someone like me. He nodded once. You have something I lost a long time ago. Vivienne stood, stepping away from the piano. You don't even know where I'm from. He stood too. Then tell me. She crossed her arms. I grew up in a second-floor apartment above a laundromat. My mom worked 3 jobs and I painted on the back of cereal boxes because paper was too expensive. I got 1 scholarship, went to a state school, and started with a ladder and a brush and a wall no one wanted. I don't do this for press or portfolios. I do it because sometimes a color on a wall is the only thing that makes a kid look up. Tristan's eyes didn't leave hers. That's exactly why I want to help. I'm not asking for help. I'm not talking about charity. I'm talking about partnership. She narrowed her eyes. You mean you want to buy in? I mean I want to build something with you. Vivienne stepped back. You don't build with people like me. You collect us. Fund us. Feature us in your next quarterly report. Tristan's jaw tightened. That's not who I am with you. You don't get to decide that. There was a beat of silence. Only the city below filled the space between them. Then he said, let me prove it. To do what? That I see you. Not as a project. Not as a problem to solve. But as someone who's already built something real. Vivienne's voice dropped. And what happens when you get bored? When the next impossible girl walks into the wrong room? He stepped toward her, close enough that she could smell the cedar in his cologne. That won't happen. Because I haven't stopped thinking about you since the second you interrupted me. Her breath caught, but she didn't move. I know it doesn't make sense, he said. But I don't want to play this safe. I don't want to pretend I'm not already in too deep. Vivienne closed her eyes. I want to take you somewhere, he said. She opened them again. Where? No contracts. No expectations. Just you and me. Somewhere far from all of this. She hesitated. You think a trip is going to fix this? I think it's the only way to find out if this is real. She looked at him for a long time, weighing everything. Then said, if I come with you, it's not because I trust you. It's because I want to see who you are when you're not wearing the suit. Tristan reached into his back pocket and pulled out something small and metallic, a key. He handed it to her. What's this? To the plane. We leave tomorrow morning. She stared at it. I'll be waiting, he said. Then he turned and walked away, leaving only the quiet echo of his footsteps behind. Vivienne stood there alone, the key heavy in her hand. She didn't move for a long time. The ocean stretched endlessly beneath the plane, a deep, velvet blue that shimmered beneath early morning light. Vivienne sat near the window, her fingers curled loosely around a cup of black coffee, watching the clouds shift. She hadn't slept. Not because she was nervous, though she was, but because something inside her refused to settle. Something that had begun the moment she stepped through the doors of Room B and saw Tristan Prescott standing at that podium. She glanced across the cabin. He was reviewing something on a slim silver tablet, his brow slightly furrowed. His jacket was off, sleeves rolled again, but unlike the night before, he looked different here, quieter, removed from the orbit of his usual world. You always work in the sky? She asked. He looked up, setting the tablet down. Only when what's on the ground makes less sense. That sounds like avoidance. Sometimes it's survival. She leaned back against the leather seat. Where are we going, exactly? You'll see. Is this your way of controlling the narrative? He met her gaze. No. It's my way of letting things happen without forcing them. She didn't respond to that. Not because she agreed, but because she wasn't ready to admit how much she wanted to believe him. The plane touched down 3 hours later on a private landing strip carved into a mountainside, surrounded by endless pine forest. A car waited, doors already open. No staff. No unnecessary ceremony. They drove in silence for a while, winding up narrow roads that curved through trees and past cliffs that dropped into shadowy ravines. Eventually, they reached a clearing where a modern house stood, glass and wood and steel folded into the landscape like it had grown there. Vivienne stepped out first, her boots crunching lightly over gravel. You own this? She asked as the wind tugged at her coat. My father built it before I was born. She turned sharply. I didn't realize he died when I was 19, Tristan said, not waiting for sympathy. I haven't been back here in years. Why bring me? Because this is the only place where I'm not performing. They walked up the path. Inside, the house was warm, filled with quiet light and the scent of cedar. No staff here either. Just silence. And space. He led her to a room that opened into a studio. Unfinished canvases leaned against stone walls, jars of brushes stood untouched. It was a place that expected creation but hadn't seen it in a long time. I thought you might want to paint, he said. If you felt like it. Vivienne looked around. You kept this for years? I didn't keep it, he said. I avoided it. Until now. She stepped closer to a blank canvas, running her hand along the edge. You think I'm here to fix something in you? No, he said. I think you being here gives me the courage to fix it myself. She looked at him, really looked, and something shifted in her chest. They spent the day in pieces. She painted. He chopped vegetables in the kitchen. They didn't speak much, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was like stepping into a new rhythm, one that didn't need constant motion or explanation. That night, they sat by the fire. She had one leg tucked under her, a blanket across her lap. He had a book in hand, though he hadn't turned a page in 10 minutes. I used to think I had to make myself smaller, she said suddenly, staring into the flames. To fit into the spaces people expected of me. To shrink the noise. Tristan set the book aside. You never once seemed small to me. And you, she asked. What did you believe? He considered that if I didn't keep climbing, I'd lose everything I worked for. That success was only safe if I never stopped chasing it. Vivienne turned to him. But you stopped. I met you. They looked at each other for a long time. Then he said, I want to fund your next project. I didn't come here for money. I know. That's why I trust you. She studied him. What's the catch? There isn't one. You choose the wall, the message, the team. I'll cover everything. No press. No branding. Just art exactly the way you want it. You're serious. I've never been more. She nodded slowly. All right. He exhaled as though something inside him had just finally unlocked. Later, as she lay in the guest room with the windows cracked open to let in the cool mountain air, she thought about how surreal it all was. And yet it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like something real, unfolding slowly but with purpose. The next morning, she found him outside, barefoot in the grass, sipping coffee as the sun broke over the ridge. She joined him, wrapping her sweater tighter. Do you regret it? She asked. Bringing you here? Letting this happen? He looked over at her, his eyes steady. No. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not chasing anything. I'm just here. She stepped closer. I'm scared, Tristan. So am I. That doesn't mean it's wrong. No, he said. It means it's finally right. He reached for her hand, and this time she let him take it. 3 weeks later, they returned to the city. Together. Vivienne's mural, her largest yet, unfolded across the side of a community center in a part of the city that had long been ignored. No press release. No logo. Just color, bold and defiant, reaching toward the sky. Tristan stood beside her as she added the final stroke. Not in a suit. Not behind a podium. Just a man who had chosen a different kind of legacy. As the sun dipped low and the wall caught the light, he turned to her. I was wrong the first day we met, he said. About what? I didn't just want to hear what you thought. I wanted to know what it would be like to stand beside someone who never needed me to be more than I am. She smiled. And? I'm never letting you go. Then he kissed her. And for once, the world didn't feel like something to escape. It felt like home. Vivienne adjusted the strap of her overalls as she stepped back from the finished mural, her fingers still stained with cobalt blue and burnt sienna. The sun had just begun to dip behind the rooftops, casting a golden wash over the wall that now pulsed with life, children with outstretched hands, woven into constellations, roots, and wings. The community center's parking lot buzzed with quiet as people gathered to take it in, some with tears in their eyes, others whispering as if afraid to disturb the magic. Tristan stood behind her, silent. You didn't say anything, Vivienne said without turning. That's either a good sign or a disaster. I'm trying to figure out how to breathe again, he said. You just did something I've never seen before. She looked over her shoulder. It's not supposed to impress anyone. It's supposed to feel like hope. He stepped closer, stopping just beside her. You did more than paint a wall. You changed the way this place sees itself. She lowered her gaze. I was terrified the whole time. So was I, he admitted. But then I watched you lead a team of volunteers who had never touched a paintbrush, come a city inspector when he tried to shut you down, and convince a 12-year-old gang lookout to help you mix colors. I've never seen anyone make chaos look like purpose. Vivienne exhaled slowly. So, we did it. He nodded. More than that. You proved it could be done your way. She turned fully to face him. And what about you? You've been quiet ever since we came back. I've been thinking. Dangerous. He gave a soft laugh and looked at the mural again. I spent years in boardrooms building things that vanished behind screens. Then I watched you turn a crumbling wall into a story people will tell their children. I can't go back to what I was doing before. Vivienne tilted her head. So, what now? Are you retiring in your 30s to become an art groupie? No, he said, more serious now. I sold the division. Her eyes widened. Wait, what? I finalized it yesterday. I kept the foundation and the innovation lab. Everything else is gone. She blinked. You walked away from billions. I walked towards something better. Vivienne paced a step away, stunned. You're not joking. I've never been more clear. She turned, her voice quiet. Why would you do that? Because I want to build a life that feels like this. Like today. I want a fun change that doesn't need to be flashy. I want to sit at long tables with people who care more about legacy than leverage. And I want to do it with you. Her heart flipped in her chest. Tristan, I know it's fast, and I know we started in the most improbable way possible. But I'm not interested in dragging this out under the illusion of caution. I love you, Vivienne. I don't want to wake up in another penthouse wondering if the best thing that ever happened to me walked away because I didn't fight hard enough. She pressed her hand to her lips. I love you, he repeated, stepping in front of her. And I want a life with you. Not just weekends or projects or rooftop dinners. I want the restless nights when your mind won't stop spinning. I want to bring you coffee when you forget to eat. I want to hold your paint-covered hands while you tell me your next impossible idea. Her voice trembled. You really mean this? I've never been more sure of anything. Vivienne looked at the mural one more time, the colors catching in the fading light, then back at him. Then let's stop wasting time. He took her face in his hands and kissed her, not like the first kiss, filled with hesitation and wonder, but like a vow. Like something that had found its place. Months later, the new initiative launched. A residency program for underrepresented artists, fully funded, with housing, materials, and stipends, all backed by the Prescott Foundation's restructured mission. They called it the Uplift Project. The first mural had become a landmark, and Vivienne's name was being whispered far beyond her city. But she stayed, not out of obligation, but because this was home. Because she and Tristan built something rooted in both their visions, a future that belonged to more than just them. He proposed on the roof of the old studio, surrounded by string lights and the rustling sounds of a city that now felt different. She said yes before he'd even finished asking. They married in the same community center she'd painted, with children from the neighborhood lining the aisle and a jazz quartet playing softly in the corner. She wore a pale gold dress with brush strokes embroidered across the hem. He wore a dark blue suit and no tie, his hand never leaving hers. They didn't honeymoon in the Maldives or on a private yacht. They spent a week in the mountains at the house his father had built, planting wildflowers and painting the studio walls with laughter and new beginnings. Years passed, not in a blur, but in vivid color. The city changed with them. More murals bloomed across buildings. More artists were given space to create. More lives shifted because two people dared to rewrite the rules. And every morning, Vivienne woke to the same hand reaching for hers, the same quiet voice whispering, "Still in." Every time, she answered, "Always."